Hello, I'm Dr. Atkinson.
And I'm Dr. Nash.
Welcome to Let's Be Honest, Chaos and Clarity in Education podcast, the podcast where we have real, unfiltered conversations about leadership, education, culture, and the issues shaping our schools every single day. Today's conversation is one educational leaders, teachers, and change makers will not want to miss.
Our guest today is Miss Shauna King, a transformational trainer, TEDx speaker, author, and nationally respected voice in school culture and organizational transformation. With more than 20 years of experience as an elementary principal, student services specialist, and classroom teacher, Ms. King has helped over 250 schools and impacted more than 15,000 educators and professionals.
She is known for helping organizations create spaces where both minds and hearts thrive, and through her work, including What We Say Matters, High Impact Relationships, and her powerful film, Forever Free, and the Illiteracy Playbook. She continues to challenge leaders to think differently about culture, literacy, relationships, and impact. Mrs. King, welcome to Let's Be Honest.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
So we're so excited. We're going to just jump right into our questions. So, Mrs. King, when you're walking into a school building, what are the very first cultural signals you notice that tell you when the culture is genuinely healthy or simply well managed on the surface?
That is absolutely a great question, because some people may think you can go in and look at the posters and the signs on the wall that say, hey, we're a great school. Here are our positive expectations. I see those and I keep on looking. And you can typically feel it. You can see how the staff are talking to each other. When I go into the main office, how do they even greet me? Within the first 5 or 10 minutes of being in a building, walking in the hallways, if I'm presenting for a staff meeting, seeing how the staff interact with each other, if I'm walking the halls and seeing how staff talk to kids, you can feel a culture. You don't read it on the wall. It's something that you can feel, and it doesn't take a lot of time.
So let's be honest, Ms. King. School leaders often believe certain culture initiatives are working because they look good on paper. Now, what's something leaders commonly think is effective that actually isn't creating the impact they assume?
Well, and this is not necessarily popular. I think sometimes we adopt every single initiative that's out there. And as someone who was the PBIS coordinator in my district, I have nothing against that. As someone who is trained in restorative practices, I have nothing against that. But often we grab onto initiatives and even frameworks without doing any type of a needs assessment for what's important for our building. So if for me to know what are the needs, the struggles, the strengths of my building should lead whatever initiative or program that I have, not just because someone says this is what we're supposed to do. So I think leaders often, we say, hey, can say, hey, what's the next program? What's this? This sounds good. Or even this worked at another school. What's best is we know our school, our students, our staff, and then we find what works for them appropriately.
So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. But where do you most often see the disconnect between culture leaders intend to create and the culture teachers, staff, and students actually experience every day?
There's this saying, and you probably have heard it. It says, if you don't feed the teachers, they will eat the children. And I think most leaders know that is so true. And we have to. I mean, we know the schools are focused on schedules and programs and things for the students. But great leaders know that how the adults interact, the culture that's built with the adult in mind is critical if you want success for children. So I think that sometimes there's a disconnect because sometimes we think, okay, we just want to make sure that the culture is okay for kids. But it's really about making sure students and adults can thrive in a school culture.
Now, you've written extensively about language and relationships. If what we say truly matters, what does a school's adult culture communicate to students, even when no one thinks they're paying attention?
You know, what I have found out in the years I've been doing this is one of the easiest things to change that can also be one of the most powerful sources of change is the way we talk to and about our kids. If you listen to how adults communicate with students, whether it comes to their academic feedback, the clarity that they're using, how they correct the behavior, how they state their expectations, all of those things that the students hear creates the culture. But then in addition to it, you have to be able to say, how are the adults talking to each other? Because it's not just me in my classroom. We know a healthy school culture talks about collective efficacy, which means what do we believe collectively we are doing for our kids? Not just what's happening in my classroom, but collectively, what impact are we having on our students? And honestly, a lot of that starts with just how we're talking to and about the students and the families that we serve.
And then also how we're talking to each other, right? Because so many times we think culture is just from top down. But that parallel relationship among staff members is extremely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's often overlooked or sometimes left to teacher's lounge or parking lot. And that is not what we want to happen.
And we're not talking about teachers complaining about the principal, right?
That doesn't happen.
So, Ms. King, some of our schools appear positive on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Great branding, polished messaging, smiling staff, but underneath, things are fractured. What are some of the subtle signs, warning signs that a school culture may be struggling beneath the surface?
So one of my favorite books is called Street Data. And Street Data really talks about what are the stories? What are the stories that are being told? You know, it's not the satellite view, it's what's being told at that level. So, you know, you can send me your reports of your suspension data or even the school discipline report card or all those types of things. But let me come talk to a parent in the parking lot while they're waiting to pick up their kids. Right? Let's talk to a student on their way out in the hallway or after school activities. Those conversations are gold and they're real. And they tell the true culture of a building. I asked, so it's May now, it's end of the school year. I asked teachers, what are the things that you think your students are saying about your class at the end of the year? Unscripted. What are the things they're going to remember about being in your class? What are they going to say? That's the real gold that sometimes we don't always capture. That's important in school culture.
So you have a film and you're a celebrity filmmaker around here. So we're going to talk about your film right now, Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. Now, what inspired you to tell the story through film? And what do you hope educators, district leaders, and policymakers confront after watching it?
So what's interesting is the topic of illiteracy has been something that I've been passionate about for a long time. And through my nonprofit, we produced a film called Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. And what it did is it examined, specifically local in the Maryland, DC, Virginia, the history of literacy going all the way back to slavery and how there has been what we say is a systemic and intentional hold to keep certain populations from being able to read. And so what the film does is it's just an objective film of the facts. Going through history, through Jim Crow period, civil rights up until now, evaluating not just what's happening in schools, but what's happening with issues like even book banning and some other societal issues. So we encourage parents, schools, and the community to get involved when it comes to eradicating illiteracy and not just saying it's only a school issue.
Wow. Very, very insightful. Now, where can people view this film?
That's awesome. Thanks for asking. So we are on the what we call the film circuit right now. We are doing film festivals, but in the DMV area, we will be premiering it on June 21st, 2026, in the Greenbelt area. After that, we will be where we premiered in the Cleveland International Film Festival. We won the DC Independent Film Festival. But within the next, thank you. We are very excited about it. We're very excited about that. So for first-time filmmakers and producers, we have made a lot of traction, and we don't take that credit for ourselves. We just really believe the message of the film has hit home. We have we have people who after the film say, I feel like I should do something. And that's exactly what we want. It'd be nice to say, oh, that was a good movie. What should I do? And so at the premiere in June, we're planning to have different programs and different initiatives and things that people can then immediately sign up for to be able to say, how can I help in my community? Or maybe it's politically where they're going to encourage their legislation to make some different changes, different ways where you can find your voice and help with this movement. So we're excited about that. But to answer how can you watch it? Within the next year, it will be on some streaming platform. We have already gotten 3 folks who are interested in putting it on streaming platforms. So as soon as that is there, you will know about it. But right now, go to foreverfreefilm.com and they will get all of the updates on that. That's foreverfreefilm.com.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. So I have a question that resonates with some of our principals, actually a lot of our principals, regarding a damaged reputation. Some have fractured trust in their schools and lingering tension from previous leadership. So what advice would you have to those principals that are stepping in that kind of environment, and where do they begin rebuilding credibility and culture?
I've seen this in many occasions where the new assigned principal comes in as Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It. And they think, okay, I'm now the savior, going to come fix everything. And I really think that that's not the move. The move is to first find out the true narrative, because sometimes what is perceived is not what is. And you will not know that until you get there, talk to the folks, talk to the people, talk to the community, find out more of the real stories of what's happening and see what's really needed. And then back to my language conversation, I always say to staff, sometimes in families, we used to say, look, we can talk about each other, but outside, you can't talk about each other. I could talk about my brother and say some issues, but you can't say something because that's not your brother. That there had to be a level of, once we decide this is who we are, who we're going to be, we have to start speaking about our school in the right way. To the point where if you're in my presence and I work at this school, you're not going to speak negatively about my building. I'm going to tell you, no, we're doing great things at this school. I'm not sure what you heard, but we do great things at this school. And there was a level of, we had to collectively own and rebrand our school name regardless of what was happening. So I think the first thing leaders have to do is get in, listen to the voices, listen to the community, and find out the true stories of what's happening and what's needed.
Someone said something in that same vein recently. You don't tear down what you helped to build.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right. That's powerful. That is so powerful.
So school leadership can be incredibly powerful, but sometimes leadership unintentionally becomes the barrier. Now, where do school leaders most often get in their own way when trying to improve culture, trust, or student outcomes?
So I think the way leaders often get in the way is becoming a solo act. You cannot do this alone, nor should you want to do this alone.
Clock that. Right.
The work is too vast and it's so much to do. And when the leader tries to put it all on themselves, they're really setting themselves up for failure. So finding the talent that's in your building, finding the strengths of the staff, creating leadership around you to be responsible for school culture. Because even when some of the schools where I'm supporting and the teachers or something can be complaining about what's possibly going on, often the teachers blame principal. And I say, but we have to make sure that from the leadership role, there is a constant communication that we are in this together. Now, the principal has a defined role, absolutely. But when it comes to school culture, everyone plays a part. And when that language is communicated regularly, it's easier to me for the teacher to understand if there's some work to be done, how can I find myself in fixing the issue? What can I do so that I'm not just complaining every day about what needs to be done? I'm coming forward with saying, this is some of the solutions and this how I can help.
So advocating for students and challenging systems require emotional endurance. What self-care advice would you give to leaders carrying their responsibility daily?
This one really hits home for me. And I can say personally, my husband and I were both principals at the same time.
Wow.
And at that time, we had a 2 and a 4-year-old. So that was not easy. That was not easy. So one, take care of the people who care for you. Always. We can never be in a situation where we are giving more to the people who we serve at work than the support system we have at home and in our families. And I think that's critical. Also, because at the end of the day, when we go home, we want rest, right? We want peace. And so taking care of our home helps us be able to be focused for work and then make sure our home is a place of peace as well. But also for everybody, find what fills your bucket. It's not the same for everybody. What fills your bucket may not fill mine, but find what fills your bucket, and whatever that is, treasure that. Hold on to that and make sure you find space to incorporate that regularly so that you can take care of you, because we know you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Ooh, find what fills your bucket.
Love it.
Drop the mic on that one. So let's talk brand, partnerships, and intentional identity. Some schools operate with what I call random acts of branding, great messaging one day and the confusion the next. How should school leaders think about community partnerships, branding, and building a school identity that truly reflects their mission?
That's a great question. And when it comes to branding, a lot of times, years ago, we never thought about branding of a school. That was something that was more in the business marketplace and things like that. But all schools have a brand. And so it's, first of all, important to know that whatever your brand is, you want to say, did you define it or did someone else define it for you? And so if we are not intentional about saying, this is who we are, this is what happens for the students in our school, this is who our teachers are, this is what we believe about our kids, guess who's going to brand it? The community is going to brand it. The media might brand it. Let one incident happen. And then you're the school where, remember, that's the school where the kid did such and such. And that's your whole brand. And so think about, what are the conversations you want had about your school and school community when you're not there? When someone is writing an article, when someone is giving a brief overview about, my child goes to such and such school, what are they going to say next? What do you want them to say? And begin making sure that that's on the lips of everybody in the building, that's in the writing, that's on the letterhead, that's in whatever you're putting out, to be able to say that this is who we are and we want you to know it, because we don't want anybody else to brand our school but us.
Absolutely.
Mrs. King, thank you for joining us on another episode of Let's Be Honest. And I'd like to share with our listeners that if this conversation challenged your thinking, share it with a colleague, your leadership team, or someone who works towards transforming school culture.
Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and let's keep being honest.
Thank you again, Ms. King.
Thank you for having me.